beach itself, or where we were going to land, is obscured by the amount of smoke from the previous explosions.
Hello and welcome to FAFF 2020. I have Matthew, Jason and Peter from the Forgotten Voices of D-Day.
Yep.
And we're going to get them having a little discussion about how the project came about, the context for it. So I'll just hand it over to you guys.
So just to help us along in this, so Jace, it's probably it kind of came at your kind of baby, didn't it, from the oral history side of things. So maybe just give us a bit of context about what the film entails and kind of how it came about in your mind.
Yeah, so we started working on a different project actually, looking at a soldier who was killed in Shanghai in 1937, and for that, as part of the research, I started looking into any available resources, archive, or anything that was left over from any other soldiers that had been served in Shanghai at the time, and listened to an audio transcript. And then some audio recordings on the Imperial War Museum website, and one of them was from a guy called Terence Otway, who led the assault on the Merville Battery during World War II on D-Day itself. And he was a young officer in Shanghai, and he told these amazing stories about him being in Shanghai and all sorts of stuff. But then he went on to talk about D-Day. And what really struck me was that it was a really personal recording. It was the original voice of the person. And a lot of documentaries you hear recordings done by actors, or you'll hear scripted stuff, whereas this was the person talking later on about their own feelings and emotions about going through these historical events. And I started listening to other veterans talking about their experiences, and it was really powerful and really moving. And it dug deeper beyond the historical context of these guys landing on a beach and liberating Europe, and going down to what they physically felt inside, what it was actually like to be there. And these were all young guys attacking this beach. A lot of them had never seen action before, and they were really scared. And especially with John Clegg, the audio that you hear in this one, I think it's really moving to hear him talk about the fear that he felt and what they've been expected to endure, which was mass casualties. A lot of them weren't expecting to come through it. So, if you're a young man and you're in the tank as he was, and you're hitting that beach, you really don't know what's going to happen. And you're there with your mates who you've built a really close relationship with over that training period. And when I listened to these voices, I was like, this is fantastic. But as the audio archive, it's not very well used because there's nothing else to go with it. It's mostly a reference tool for researchers and historians to nip in and out of. And I thought this is something we could do something with. And obviously Matt, being an artist who we've used before for different projects, I thought that we could really turn this from a purely audio piece into an audio visual piece and just bring it out to a much wider audience.
Yeah, and I think like you say, the oral history, just to kind of precursor all that, like to give everyone a little bit of context about kind of what projects and other things, how we work and kind of things, is myself and Jason kind of got together a few years ago on kind of started off on history projects, and that's kind of where we lean to now, I'd say, still, isn't it? We're kind of in the heritage history world. That's why we've ended up. And then so Matt's done on loads of our projects. Matt's done like amazing illustrations just to kind of fill in gaps, especially in historical films when you're lacking a bit of archive material, you're just lacking a scene to give some context. And then this was kind of the next step, wasn't it, really? And it was kind of as you say, the oral history kind of just is underused because it's difficult to use because it's so emotive, so it's really difficult to kind of pair with kind of archive photos and things like that just don't make it seem a bit kind of hammy and a bit kind of cliche. But the Matt's illustrations, and this is insert Matt here, the Matt's illustrations kind of really just get that emotive kind of get that emotion across, don't they? As Jay said, it's kind of you can really imagine what it's like from that, being there on those beaches or wherever, in any kind of conflict like that you're listening to someone that was actually there, and it's just being kind of sensitive, isn't it, to that? And I don't know what your thoughts on that, of how you kind of approach that in terms of, when we give you a piece of audio, or we've taken down like a 2-hour interview with someone maybe and got out this 1 to 2 minute kind of piece of oral history, and then we go, okay, go. We've kind of got some ideas, but obviously you're kind of the artist. We can't actually draw them. We kind of maybe got some ideas, but we kind of can lean on you to that. So how do you approach that in kind of an abstract way? Because some of the things that we give to you, especially in this D-Day one as well, there's some abstract kind of illustrations in there that don't necessarily give any factual context to things or information, but they just sum up, you know, things like the rope tightening for the tension and things like that. How do you kind of approach that when we...
Yeah, because I think some of the other projects we've worked on where it's been like kind of using illustration because of a communication tool where potentially there's nothing there, where it may have been more of a kind of historical, like one of the other ones would be, say, someone in Parliament talking, but this is kind of completely separate, and you're really trying to kind of, like, I suppose terms like visually communicate like concept ideas. And, you know, there's bits where they're in the tank where he's, you know, and then there's bits where he's talking about his own fear, as you say. So it's kind of really need to kind of, you're kind of physically trying to show that, but you're trying to show the actual, like, it's just the power of that emotion at the time. And I don't think that can be, sometimes it was quite an abstract thing to approach, but you've got to think of it like, you know, it's more than just like a tank or a battle scene, you know, that is other kind of very, as you say, like visual stuff that you see kind of looped on, say, documentaries and stuff like that. The actual, like, because it's his own human story from his voice, from his own like memories. I think it's really important to kind of take a step back, reduce kind of imagery you're using, and really kind of focus on kind of what he's saying and those emotions and stuff like that. Because it's like anything, if you can reduce it down to kind of like something a bit rawer, like he's doing, because it's just him, you know, you kind of really pulls out kind of his emotion. You're not distracted from what he's saying as well. So there's a fine line between that.
I think
definitely, yeah.
I think from my... Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Go on, Alex.
From my perspective, it very much feels like Memory, the film that we're watching. There is this sense of a selective experience of what's happening around him. We have still images, often with a little bit of movement in them. We have, like, it's not like the D-Day landings you see in Hollywood where it's overstimulating everything. It's very much, it seems filtered as well through someone's memory. So I guess that's very interesting from an artistic perspective, how to represent memory, not reality.
Yeah, that's definitely a key word that we've used throughout that, I think, because this film was from a series we did. Did we do 3 or 4? Was it for this?
There's 3, yeah.
3, wasn't it? Yeah. So they all kind of link in together, and they're all that kind of hazy kind of, yeah, memory. Obviously, the oral history is from someone's memory. It's an old man remembering, you know, what he did, you know, years before. But it's that mixture of like the illustration and the music that just gives it, and the oral history that gives it that kind of, yeah, that kind of half remembered, kind of just raw, as Matt says, and Jason says, that kind of, you just dial it down into that raw emotion that kind of comes across.
And there's quite a strong tradition in especially war films from the 50s of it's sort of intimated but not shown. And I think that is more powerful as a visual image, because you yourself as the audience fill in the image yourself rather than being shown it. And obviously a lot of that was done for the fact that they couldn't use visual effects for a lot of stuff. And the emotion was shown through people rather than the events that were going on. And I think that's what we tried to get across here. You can show a scene and it's intimated what's going on, and you can hear the voice, and you don't need lots of visual examples and interpretation of that. It's almost, you want the viewer to interpret that image to themselves through what's being given, both audio and visual. And I think that provides something that can be more powerful and poignant as well, to be fair, especially at the end when he's talking about what they expected with the losses and it's just the helmet upside down. That image suggests so many different things, and you can take from that what you want, as he's talking about potential loss and casualties. And obviously it wasn't as bad as he thought, but it kind of symbolizes a lot of different things. So that's what we wanted to try and do for that, make it, you know, it crosses over different emotions and feelings and knowledge as to the events of what's going on.
All right. Well, I think unless there's anything else very pressing that we should add to this discussion, I think we'll wind it up there, because we got some really great material. So I'd just like to thank all 3 of you for taking part in this interview, Peter, Jason and Matthew. And just remind everybody that if you follow the links below, we can get the tickets for the full screening online of the programme for FAFF 2020. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.